Hello everyone, welcome to our video how to create and to connect to Azure SQL using SQL Management Studio and how to configure the Azure SQL firewall. So first we will get a demo workflow which will give you a visualization of the demo steps which help in better understanding of what we are going to do in the demo. Then we will go for the demo. But first let me give you a quick introduction about myself. My name is Mohammed Radwan. I'm a developer technologies MVP and principal DevOps consultant. I have been doing software development for more than 15 years now, worked on several projects for different enterprise customers across different regions and countries. I heavily participated in the community, developed several frameworks, presented many sessions, holding various certificates for Azure and DevOps. I started back in 2002 as a classic ASP developer, relocated multiple times in multiple countries, worked with several technologies and for different roles and positions. And for the last 8 years, I moved to consultancy-based role where I focused more on helping different companies, some of them from the Fortune 500, to improve their software development and delivery using DevOps and automation. I have developed and authored several frameworks, command line tools, and guides. You can find them on GitHub and Azure DevOps Marketplace. I like to share my experience. This is why I have a YouTube channel and blog where they have hundreds of videos and posts that share different topics from my real experience. I have presented many sessions in several user group conferences, events, and customer site as well in different countries. So I got the chance and the opportunity to work in different culture, project size, and company size as well, which helped me to have different experience. Here are some links for my activities. So first we will have our machine which has the SQL Server Management Studio installed. Then we will create the resource group on Azure which will hold the SQL and the database. Then create the SQL Server. I will use a username and password to create the SQL logical server. Then create a firewall rules which start and end with an IP. And if I give the IP address as 0, this means that allow other Azure resources to access that SQL. And since my virtual machine on another Azure resources, so I can access that. Of course, if I want to access the Azure SQL from on-premises machine, then I need to configure get my IP on this machine, and I need to build a rule for a specific IP on the firewall for SQL. Then I will create the database, and then after that I will connect with the SQL Management Studio using the username and the password while I created the SQL Server on Azure. So let's go for the demo. Then here I will run the Cloud Shell. The Cloud Shell is a command line on the cloud which I can run instead of running the command from my machine, because in this case I don't need to install any command line interface tools. So the first is, let's clear that to have a clean one. So the first is I will create the main resource group that will has all the resources of the lab. This will create. So let's navigate to the resource group, refresh. We can see that the resource group created. Let's navigate that. So here I will create the SQL Server logical server, and as we can see we use here the resource group that I created and also the location for the resource group and a username and the password. And this username and password I will use them later in the connection string to connect to my app. So this will create the SQL Server logical server. So let's navigate here, refresh. So we can see that the SQL Server created. Let's open the SQL Server. And now I will navigate to the firewall. So we can see that allow Azure service resource to access the server is turned off. So I will create a firewall rule which will turn it on. So as we can see, this command will create a firewall rule for this resource group for the SQL server. And the firewall rule has name and has a start IP and the end IP. As long as the start IP and the end IP, all of them 0, It means that allow the Azure resources to access the SQL server. So let's execute that command and get back to the firewall. Let's refresh by going. So as we can see now, it's on. So let's navigate back to the resource group. So get back here and start creating the SQL database. So here, as we can see, I will create the database using the DTU model with S0 basic tier. So let's navigate to the resource group to see the database. So if I refresh, we can see now the database is created. And if we go for the type of the resource, we can see this is SQL database and this is SQL server. The resource group where it has the database and copy the name of the SQL Azure. Remember, because the virtual machine exists on Azure and we put the firewall rule to enable Azure resources, so I can connect with that. If the SQL Management Studio on my local machine, I need to add my local machine IB as a firewall rule on Azure SQL. Then I will put here the username and password that I used to create the SQL logical server and then connect. So this connecting the SQL Management Studio to Azure SQL Server. So I can navigate to the table and also see the to-do. We can see the columns. I can also retrieve some field. Let's select the top records and we can see that it has the data. Again, if I go for the SQL Server for the firewall, here is the place where I can put my local IP if I want to connect to the SQL Server from on-premises machine. At the end, I would like to thank you for watching the video. Please, if you have any question or comment, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find more information on my blog, which will appear at the end of the video, along with some other related video. Thank you.